Hi everyone. As Aditya said, my name is Lalita. I'm the regional director for Techstars, and I'm so happy and excited to see so many of you participating in this weekend. It's such a wonderful opportunity to stop by and say hi to all of you from Malaysia. So I'm based out of Kuala Lumpur, and I look after all the programs and partnerships that we have in with Startup Weekend across the Asia Pacific region, including India. So it's great to be here. I hope you're all having a good time and you're learning a ton this weekend. On the side, I also host a podcast, so that's kind of me and what I do. I've been in this role for the last 6 years, so I've seen all the different parts and emotions and um, journeys that founders have. And one of the things that I think is very important, especially during programs like Startup Weekend, is to have a foundation where we actually spend a little bit of time to talk about pitching and your pitch deck and preparing you for how you culminate and end the Sunday that you're going to have tomorrow. So it's I can see in the chat Akash also has a podcast about zombies. So if anybody is keen on that, you have a lot of podcast recommendations coming at you this evening. But coming back to what we're going to talk about, I want to take about maybe 20 or so minutes to really run through some of the frameworks and foundations and guidelines that you need as a founder, as a team, as a participant of Startup Weekend to get your pitch ready. A lot of people, especially participants at Startup Weekend, get so caught up in doing the work, and it's so important that you do that work, but it's equally as important that you set some time aside, or at least give somebody in your team that task to focus on building your pitch deck and working on the actual script and story of the pitch. Because if you don't do that, you're going to end up going up on Sunday evening and pitching for the first time in front of everybody without any practice, without really going through your slides. And when you do something like that, you're going to end up missing a lot of the things that you actually want to share. So today, we're going to focus on the pitch day deck. So as you start and grow your entrepreneur journey, your founder journey, you will realize and understand that you will always have two pitch decks. So two pitch decks that you will have on hand with you at all times. One is the one that you use to tell your story, with you being the focal point. And the other one is the investor pitch deck. It's the pitch deck that has a lot more information. It's a lot more detailed. It's a lot longer. And you will leave it there when you are not there to tell your story. So it's supposed to be longer. But today we're going to focus on the pitch day deck. So starting off, we want to focus on the framework. So how are you thinking about the framework? What on earth is that? And the first rule when you're thinking about framework is remembering that you're telling a story. So you're not coming to your 5 minutes tomorrow evening to just share data or just share statistics. You're there to tell a story. When somebody comes to you and they, tell you 10 random words in random order, you're not going to remember them very easily. But if they tell it to you in a sentence that has a beginning, middle, and end, it has meaning, it has an arc, you will be able to verbatim share back that sentence, because that's how the human mind is built. The human mind is built to understand stories a lot better and retain it and remember it a lot better than it is built to remember data and statistics just as standalone data and statistics. So when you're thinking about your story, remember that you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. So something that has an arc, something that flows through. And when you start off, that first 30 seconds when you're starting off, you must remember to start off strong. And we'll cover that a bit more later, but it's called a hook. And you spend that first 30 seconds hooking your audience, because remember, you're competing with all the other teams that are there to get the attention and the points from those judges. So you need to find a way for the judges to remember that you will stand out. So you will have a hook. It's 30 seconds. Usually founders tend to cover the problem that they have, whether it's statistics or something they've discovered, something that they're able to really hook their audience into understanding the context, the background, the why they've started working on this problem and why they're solving it. That's kind of where the start of how you build your hook is. So after you have found your hook, you want to remember that in all of this, there's so much that you want to share. There's so much data. There's so much detail, but you must remember you have 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, you have to focus on the right things. You have to prioritize what you have to say. So there's a lot of things that you'll be passionate about. There's a lot of things that you will want to, get across. And sometimes you rush through it too much. But remember that you should prioritize it. Remember that you also have 3 minutes at the end for Q&A, that you can go deeper into detail about certain points that you may have brushed across, because that's your time as well. As much as it's the judge's time to ask you questions, it's also your time to utilize to go deeper into things in answering those questions. So brushing across things is good enough, because judges who want to know deeper about those things will spend that time to ask. So remember that less is more. You must prioritize what you want to say, because most of the time it's important what you say, but it's also important how you say it. So this is, I hope everybody knows who this is, but this is everything I'm saying, I know I keep saying, oh, it's important that you have to remember this, but it is important. And that's why they're all the guidelines that you have to remember. And this is, something that we tend to do as human beings, not just founders. And don't lie is it's very blunt, but the point of that is really don't exaggerate. Don't say things or build things up that you haven't accomplished, that you could be caught in the middle of your presentation to be, pointed out as something you haven't done or accomplished, because the point of your presentation is to, number one, communicate your idea effectively to the people that are listening, but also number two, to build trust. Because if people were to, use that pitch as the foundation of coming on board to work with you, it's that first, level of meeting. It's that first level of communication. So showing progress of what you've accomplished, analyzing and validating what you've understood from the weekend, and then what you hope to accomplish in your future is so much better than coming here and pretending that you've accomplished or done all of these things before you've actually done them. The goal is to build trust. And this is the second last framework point that you have to remember, is when you are building the story, remember that there's an arc, as I said earlier, and that arc is like a fishbone that runs through the beginning, middle, and end of your story. It helps to tie everything together. It helps make sure there's a theme throughout everything you're talking about. It's what your idea hangs on. It's the why that you're doing it. It's the major thread that is throughout the pitch that's there to showcase all of the important stuff that your idea hangs upon. It is that why. And once you understand that why, it'll become much easier for you to build out that beginning, middle, and end. It'll be much easier for you to actually build out that framework. And I know, 54 hours is such a short amount of time to work on something and build something crazy. And you're so focused on the building part of it. But it is equally as important for you to take time and practice your pitch. Take time to run through that 5 minutes as if it was really the 5 minutes. Don't just talk through the key points and think that that's enough. Actually spend time with your team, whoever that's going to pitch. Remember to take time and do that. Spend 5 minutes and make sure it's real, and you are doing it as the real deal. You are continuing to practice as many times as your schedule will give you from now until the Sunday that you have to pitch. So as we're talking about the framework and all these rules, I also want to share with you all the structure. So this is something that I work with a lot of TEDx speakers, and one of the things that we always work with them on is kind of the structure of the talk. So I'm going to dive into two things right now. One is the outline that would generally work really well for a startup pitch, and the second is, as a presenter, what are the things that you have to focus on to make sure that your talk, your pitch is structured as best as possible. This is a general outline that I generally share to founders for that are doing anywhere between a 5 to 8 minute pitch. It will cover everything that you need to touch upon that, you know, goes into your why, the problem, the business model, the impact that you're going to have, the validation that you've gotten from your customers, as well as the design aesthetic that you've done. So this is a really safe skeleton. You can move things around, of course, to suit your flow better. But if you are able to touch upon all of these points, you're generally going to be able to touch upon the main aspects of most judging criteria that come during a pitch competition. So you've got your hook, and then you want to talk about the problem a little bit more in depth, but never spend more than, you know, like 45 seconds talking about the problem, or at most a minute. Anything beyond that is too much already. So keep in mind that however you're talking about the problem, try to blend it into your hook so you have a little bit more time. And when you're talking about your solution, be as clear as possible when you are talking about it. Don't bring jargon into this. Do not be fluffy with it. If you're building a website, say you're building a website. If you're building a mobile app, say you're building a mobile app. If you're building a series of workshops, say you're building a series of workshops. Don't say things like, I'm building a multi-platform, machine learning, AI, whatever. Be as clear as possible and focus on a one-liner that outlines what you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're doing it for, and how they're going to be receiving it, and what the unique value proposition you're bringing to the table is for this solution, right? And then of course the other four things are, you know, what you've done so far. So what kind of traction, how you've understood your market, how big it is, what is the focus that you're having on this, be as niche as possible where you can, why you're the best. Never shy away from sharing what your competition is, because having competition really showcases that the problem you're solving, there's a need for it. Whether it's indirect or direct competition, it's important to showcase that there is this market for it. So having competition is actually a good thing. It's just about how you're showcasing it. And of course, your ask, you know, the funds, who your customers are, what kind of partners you'd like to bring on board. And the last thing, which I forgot to put in here, is to showcase your team, why your team is the best team to move this idea forward. And so here are the four main things that when you're building your framework, you have to keep in mind. So number one, this is very much to do with the hook. Start by making your audience care. Use an example that's relatable, whether it's intriguing, something that is something that evokes emotion, whether it's a happy emotion, a scared emotion, anything that helps them stop what they're doing to completely pay attention to what you are saying. Number two, explain your idea clearly and with conviction. Be as simple as possible. Don't be bogged down with the idea that you need to be very complicated. You have to share, you know, words you don't even know or understand. Try to share it on a level at which you are sharing it with somebody who has no idea what you've done in the last 54 hours, right? Or is not even from this industry. So be as clear and as simple as possible when you're sharing it. Number three, this is where the validation that you've done, the conversations you've had with your customers come in, the research that you've done over the weekend. This is where you want to be able to showcase how your idea is backed by that evidence, by that traction, by feedback that you've received from those people that you have spoken to. And lastly, you want to end with addressing how your idea affects your audience. So whether it's the audience that's listening to you or whether it's the audience that you're targeting to sell this to, showcase how this idea can work and make those people's lives better or more efficient or effective when they adopt this idea and accept it. So all in all, everything that I've said so far, this is the goal for it, right? You want to be able to communicate your idea effectively to the people that are listening to it. They should be able to go away from your pitch and re-pitch your pitch. That's how clear you want it to be. So all of this done and dusted, that was very, framework specific. Now I'm going to share a couple of resources that'll be super helpful for you in building your actual deck. So before you think about actually going to a PowerPoint, sometimes it's really difficult to stare at a blank PowerPoint or Google slide, page. So take some time with a paper and pen or even a Google, like a document, and write out the framework that you want to build in. Like, how do you want this story to work? How does this arc actually go? Where is the beginning, middle, and end? What are the things that you want to focus on and build? And then start building out your presentation. And when you're building out your presentation, remember, the presentation is an aid. It's there to help you as the speaker give this information, share this story with your audience. But you are supposed to be the focal point. It's not meant to be the presentation. So minimize the amount of text that is in the presentation. Make sure that if people are to get information out of this presentation, they have to be listening to you. So use pictures that are able to convey more story, more emotion, that actually help bring the words that you are saying to life. When you're thinking about colors and how you're keeping a theme throughout, make sure you have picked the right colors that complement each other. So the two websites down in blue, they are color palette websites. So you can go there and either put in a color that you'd like to focus on and then find a palette that complements that color. Or if you are stuck right now and you don't know what your brand colors are, you can go and explore really popular color palettes and find something that works for you. And it'll give you all of the hex codes to make it super simple to convert that color into the documents that you are using. So remember, keep keywords in your presentation so that it triggers what you have to say, and don't have paragraphs there because it's going to distract your audience into reading that paragraph more than it's going to engage them to listen to you. And when you're displaying your data, remember that sometimes no chart is the best chart. Pull out numbers that really work. Perhaps, put in a map that's going to showcase what you want to showcase, or just color in a pie chart with no other data on it and then speak to that. Don't screenshot what's on the Google form. Don't screenshot something from a research paper. Find a way to take the data that you have and display it in a way that makes sense for your story, as opposed to just copying and pasting things that are on the sheets that you have received. So now moving on to more resources. These are obviously all of the places that you can use and build presentations on. My recommendations, especially if you don't have a designer on your team, is using Google Slides and the templates that come with Google Slides, or even Googling templates for Google Slides, because there's an abundance of them, and you'll be able to find something that works really easily for you. The other one that is really beautiful, really easy, and is also a free tool for presentations is Canva, but you will have to download it as a PDF in order to share it across easily to like your presenters or whatever, if you're not the person that's actually presenting. Those are my personal two recommendations, because I think if you are not a designer, or if you don't have a designer on hand and you want something that comes off beautiful, simple, doesn't look terrible, and is able to bring a lot of the ideas that you want to share in a visually pleasing manner, those are the two: Google Slides and Canva. These three websites, these three platforms are really helpful for people who may not have tech talent on their team, and they want to be able to showcase a visual workflow of what their website or their mobile app can look like, but you don't have anybody on your team that knows how to code or knows how to build something. These three websites are super, super simple for you to do that. So if you just Google them, you'll be able to find them. If you are looking to build icons or insert icons, whether it's in your presentation or your visualization of your website or your mobile app, these three websites have a ton of free, beautiful icons that you can download and use really easily. And lastly, if you are looking for images that are high resolution, that are free to use, that are not stock imagey, that don't look terrible, Unsplash or Pexels have a astounding library and an abundance of work from incredible photographers around the world who have put their work for free to be able to be used by people, as long as credit is given at the end of the presentation. So yeah, those are the resources, and these are my last 7 points that I think are guidelines you should remember as you're going into Sunday. So number 1 is, please find the time to practice. Even if it's one time, it's still one time more than not practicing at all. So please practice. Number 2 is create a pace. Don't rush through your presentation like a bullet train. Smile, pause, breathe. Use this time to, fight off any nervousness that you may have. I know that presenting virtually is really weird and different than presenting in person. And you have to keep in mind that you are only taking up 10% of the screen and your slides are taking up 90% of the screen. So creating a pace and holding that authority while you're presenting is vital. And also, don't repeat what's on the slide, because you're only taking up such a small portion of the presentation, like visually on the screen. You want to make sure that you are still being the focal point. People remember to look at you and they're not just reading what's on your slide. Don't be afraid of the silence. There's not going to be any feedback that comes across especially when you're giving a presentation virtually. So if 20% of it is silent, it's okay, and it should be. People should be taking time to marinate. You should be taking time to pause and let people reflect back on the sentence that you've just said as you're moving from slide to slide or point to point. As much as you can, try to maintain eye contact. So don't have your presentation or your screen over here and look over here while your webcam is here. Don't do this the whole time. Don't do this, the whole time when you're looking at your notes. Try to find a good balance where your notes and your presentation is on the screen at the same time, so that you're really able to balance the two and give both your presentation and your camera enough screen time with your face. Remember, this is how we started. So please tell your story. Don't just tell your statistics. Don't just share data. Actually share, the passion, the why, the what you've done over the weekend. And as you're doing all of that, remember to be the most authentic version of you. Don't try to be another speaker. Don't try to, copy the style of somebody else. Understand what your style is, hone in on that, and be that version of it as much as you can. So we've come to the end. I saw that there were a couple of questions about whether or not I'm going to share this presentation. I will be sharing the link to this presentation with the organizers, and I will let them share it across to all of you. So anything that you missed, don't worry about it. You'll be able to refer back to it and use it hopefully as a helpful reference point as you are building and going into your presentations. So that's it. We've come to the end. I have a little bit more time, so if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to address them. Aditya, I think you can come back now.
I am back. Any question, guys? Anyone? Yes, we have a question in the chat. Yes.
Okay. Oops. All right. So I see a question here. What defines the line between sharing and oversharing while pitching? So I think that's a very personal thing, right? If Akash, if you could maybe clarify what you mean by oversharing. So to me, and what I've understood from that question, it's more of a prioritization of what you'd like to share given the time limit that you have. So it's not so much as it's about understanding what it is that you'd really like to get across during that 5 minutes, and then keeping anything additional that you don't think is important or vital to go into detail to the very end or in the appendix. In terms of oversharing as part of like the process and what you've done, that's quite a personal thing to decide upon what you'd like to share and what you'd like to not share. As much as you can, being as open, honest, and authentic with the reasons you've done things or what you've accomplished has always only proven to be helpful to a founder's presentation. So try to be as true to that as possible. Can you give an example of how we can start with a story? Sure. So this is a example from a startup that pitched at our once upon a time that pitched at our accelerator program in Boulder a couple of years ago. The startup is called ScriptPad, and what they do as a company is that they help digitize doctors' handwritings on prescriptions in order to minimize the like really staggering rate of which people were being misprescribed their medication because the people that were filling them out, the pharmacists, the people at the hospitals, couldn't read what the doctor said. So the way they started their story, the way they started their pitch was actually to share some very, very dramatic statistics about how misprescribing medication was such a big problem, how it was affecting, the people around them. And as an audience member, you got jolted because you realized how common that was and how easily it could happen to somebody you loved. And what their solution was something so simple to help reduce that problem incredibly quickly and incredibly efficiently. So that's an example of a story. Everybody's story is different, so you really need to be able to find what works for you and what's really true to your journey so far. All right, what other questions are there? Pitching really need a prototype or just an idea is enough? I think it depends on the judges and the organizers and how they'd like to specifically address this question. But to me, I believe that for Startup Weekend, if you have something incredible that you've built, amazing, but a prototype is just as good, especially given the short amount of time that you have. So showcasing something visual that helps the judges understand what you're trying to build after the weekend is it's a good thing to have in the background. But when you are doing a run through of the prototype or you're showing the prototype, please, 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 please don't waste your time or the judge's time in showing what the login page is going to look like, or where you put your email address, or what the about page is, like that's not important. It's not anything mind-blowing. It's not something you need to spend time to do. So really, that's what I mean by oversharing or, prioritizing. You want to use the time that you have wisely to be able to show things that actually matter, things that drive your idea forward, and things that showcase the talent of your team. So that's my point on prototyping. Don't show things that you don't have to show.
Yeah,
How to pitch? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I did.
yes, I'll just add in here. So, what we have also preferred is that a prototype would be something where they can actually showcase what the process look like or what is unique in their algorithm or something like that. Just don't show stock pages or something. It's not required, but prototype is encouraged. So yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to quickly address these last few questions. How to pitch without the risk of somebody stealing your idea. So this is a very tricky thing to answer because you can't prevent somebody from stealing your idea, but you can make sure that you are the person that's executing that idea the best. It's kind of funny how we always forget that, like, things like Google or Facebook or WhatsApp or Spotify or even Netflix weren't the first people in their field. They came about after somebody had already started doing social media and search engines and streaming services and music services and messaging services. And yet they came in to just be the best possible platform, option, solution for customers that they could be. And that's how they ended up dominating those fields. So it's very tough to answer that question without, like 100% being able to guarantee you that nobody's going to steal your idea. But it's also important that you remember, tons of great ideas happened after somebody was already working on them, and just like the best team came about to execute that idea. So the same with Startup Weekend, it's all action. It's not just talk. That's what you have to remember as you're pitching. It's not about the idea, it's about the execution. Is it essential to have a partner, co-founder at starting stage for funding? It is not essential, but it's always helpful to have somebody that you can go through this journey with, because it is a long and tough thing to do. So having a team is always super helpful. Generally, when funders, venture caps, anybody that's coming in to invest in your startup see that you are a solo founder, it's always sometimes just a little bit tougher, but knowing that you have a co-founder that you're working alongside with just adds like confidence. And it's really a preference thing. It's not a mandatory essential thing. Can we get the complete recording of this session? Yeah, I guess if there is a recording, you can have it. and I will share the slides with everybody. So yeah. Any other questions? If not, I think that's it.
I guess, yes. So, yep, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in, Lalitha. Thank you
It is
so
my
much.
pleasure.
Yeah. And I hope everyone liked it. Yes, you can put your reviews in the chat, reactions, anything you can show. Yep. So I think they loved it. So yes, thank you so much for coming in. And we are having two more mentors in the room. So yes, we will be continuing with the mentor session. Everyone,
All the
you
best,
can
everyone. Good
go back
luck.
to your sheet.
Happy pitching.
Great. Thank you so much, Lalitha. And you guys can go back to the pitching sheet. Whosoever the mentor you want, there is a link to their LinkedIn and description there. And you can book the slots. And yes, we are good to go. So let's do it. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys. See you.
Thank you.